Hi everyone, welcome to Eco Convos with Dan. My guest today was actually the wonderful Sean Morrow. Now Sean's from One Earth Landscaping. We had a good chat about everything from his permaculture style plantings through to his work he's doing with frog ponds. Now in particular his property itself has over 74 ponds with the idea of actually expanding for more. The importance of these, why they're great for his property in particular, but also how it's actually worked to encourage more wildlife actually into his property. It's just an absolutely inspiring story. Wonderful place to see. Look, make sure you check out the visit video we did of his place as well. It's absolutely worth a watch. This guy's fantastic. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Talk to you soon. Hi everyone and welcome to Eco Convos with Dan. I'm your host Dan Vandorf and we are here at Koran with Sean Morrow at One Earth Landscaping. Sean, thank you so much for your time, mate. It's great to be along and having a chat with you.
Welcome. Thanks for coming. Thank you.
So Sean, you've been working in landscaping now for 21 years, and so mate, tell us a bit about how you've gone from that. Were you always on an earth focus idea, or have you?
Look, as long as I can remember from as a child, I've been deeply connected to plants and animals.
Yeah.
I don't remember a time that I haven't been. And it was just a natural transition. Left high school, straight into landscaping.
Yeah.
So I've been in the industry for 30 years, but I've been running this company for 21.
For 21. Okay. All right. No worries. So, in terms of your upbringing, so whereabouts did you start, and how did this thing start?
Grew up in Sydney.
Yep.
Always had a passion for nature. Always. But
was that passed on from your parents at all, or was it just something
mum
that
and
was
dad?
just you?
Mum and dad never camped, but we went bush all the time. So
Okay.
we were constantly bushwalking. I was constantly out in nature.
Yeah.
So it was beautiful in that regard. I didn't miss the camping, but we were out in nature all the time.
Yeah.
So they definitely had a definite connection to the outside world, but they didn't have a spiritual connection to it. They enjoyed the bush.
Yeah.
But they didn't have a deep spiritual connection to it.
I understand.
But they took us there a lot, which was beautiful.
So that's obviously for you. That's now started, and actually really did start that spiritual connection for yourself.
Well, it wasn't a spiritual connection when I was a child because I didn't understand the depth of it.
Yep.
I connected with plants and animals, and I didn't know any other people that connected the same way as I did as a child. So I felt a bit alone as a child, a little bit, because I didn't have anyone that connected in the same ways that I did. But it wasn't until I was about 21 that I started to meet those people.
Yep.
Look, I put my first pond in. First thing I did was my first pond in with Dad when I was 8.
Yeah.
And now I've put about 450 ponds in.
So just a couple more.
Just a couple, yeah.
So in terms of the first pond you started, so you're doing ponds now for habitat, and that's really where I want to go into shortly. But the first pond you did with your dad was that a habitat pond? Or?
It was for frogs.
It was for frogs. Yep.
Again, we grew up in lower North Shore of Sydney, and we had a little tiny suburban backyard, and I managed to twist their arm into 3 ponds. I got 3 ponds in the property. Yeah. And then by the time I was 21, I left that property.
Okay.
So that property's unfortunately been bulldozed and it's gone.
Yeah.
Something else has been built there now, but yeah, that was where it really started. Where I started putting ponds in. That was the point. Had they not allowed me to put any in, I would have been upsetting me as a child. They allowed me to put them in. I kept a whole range of animals too. I had yabbies, frogs, turtles, water dragons. We had fish. We had so many different animals growing up. So I kept a lot of different things.
So your landscaping side of things, has that always been essentially conservation focused, or has that something that's developed over time?
It's developed. Look, I had a business in Sydney when I was in my early 20s, and then I left and went traveling for 7 years. And then before I came back from that travel, I was living in Canada for a year and a half, and I got clear that I wanted to come back to Australia and start an organic landscaping business. Yeah. So I wanted to be doing things very differently to a standard landscaper. Yeah. So we still do everything they do, but we do things we have a lot more unique approach.
In terms of how you're actually designing your gardens, and when you're looking at it as a landscaper, are you before in traditional landscaping is very much I want to put a retaining wall here and to here, and this is how I want to change the landscape. Are you working with more how you can work with what is there already, or
now I am? Yeah. Look, years ago I was just doing landscaping for people, but since I've come back to Australia, started the business in 2000. And and yeah, the focus became very clear from that point. It was permaculture based, it was food growing, and it was habitat specifically. So I didn't really get into ponds heavily until I got to here.
Okay.
So since I've moved to the coast, that's where most of the ponds have gone in Sunshine Coast.
Yep.
I've got 74 ponds in the garden at the moment.
That's a whole lot of ponds.
Yeah.
So.
And they're all uniquely different, because all those different species like uniquely different niches. So I create very different ponds for all those different types of animals. Okay,
so I think that's probably where a good place to go now. Talking about your different ponds and your unique habitats for for the wildlife that is here. What are some examples of places that of differences in ponds? My idea of ponds is a few rocks around the side, a bit of a divot, and it's got some water in it. There is more to it than that, right?
Yeah. Look, the most critical thing I can suggest to people is understanding temporary ponds and permanent water. I have most of my ponds are permanent, but I have about 8 ponds that are ephemeral, so meaning they're temporary ponds. If I didn't have those ponds in the garden, I wouldn't breed almost a third of the species of frogs on the coast here that like those temporary water supplies.
Yeah.
Many species love the permanent water.
Yeah.
So I basically have a mixture of ephemerals and permanent water.
But again, encourage that diversity in the
because they all have different have different requirements. So I have ponds that are 2 meters above the ground. I have ponds that are under the ground, ponds that are on the level. And again, they're all different. Some are with bird baths. Some of them with bathtubs, and some are old laundry sinks. But a lot of them are just free formed with a pond liner.
Yeah. Okay. So, is it specifically for frogs in particular that you've got this set up here?
No, it's for everything.
So, okay.
Look, when I first got here, I put a pond in just over here. The first pond I put in was about 20 meters that way, and within a couple of weeks I started getting frog spawn in it. I got very excited. So my focus became about frogs.
Yeah.
For the next 5 years, but then after about 5 years, I noticed the frog numbers went massively high. And then after about 5 years, they started to plateau because all the other animals started eating them. So all of a sudden, more carnivorous marsupials, more lizards, more birds, all those other animals, more snakes came into the system. So all those animals started to increase numbers too. Frogs decreased, but the ecosystem became much more balanced in that regard. So yes, I do very much encourage all those animals. So when I put a pond in, I say to clients, be careful because you will attract snakes. You will attract all these other animals that utilize that water for breeding or for just drinking.
Yep. So it's one of those things that's something to be absolutely taken into consideration as your property is being developed, as you're actually working around it. You are creating, essentially, you're enhancing the ecosystem that's there at the moment, which is going to be attracting the animals.
I'm trying to make the system as biodiverse as possible because I'm focusing on not just 2 or 3 species of birds. I'm focusing on 50 or 60 species of birds potentially, and dozens of species of frogs, many species of lizards. My actual favorite animal is not a frog; it's an eastern water dragon. Yeah, I have about 20 living down here. Yeah, and they bring a lot of joy to me. I'd like to see them. I'd like to see about 50 to 100 here if I could. Yeah, but again, I think they'll get to critical mass at some point, and then all of a sudden the numbers will increase. Yeah, but I've got a lot of dragons here now, so it is my favorite animal. Okay. Any particular reason why? Always has been. Yeah. Okay. I mean, I adore frogs, but there's something about a water dragon. I mean, in terms of a reptile, would be my favorite reptile. Yeah. Birds have different favorite birds. Yeah. Black cockatoos are strong, powerful for me, but I also have powerful experiences with other animals too. So we always had the really powerful experience with the black cockatoos because it meant rain was coming. Yeah. Yeah. That was always what we grew up. See the black cockatoos, fantastic, it's coming. And I grew up in very much drought areas and things like that, so it made a massive difference. So you certainly do get those connections with the animals and reasons why things would come into into being in an area and why you would attract certain things. But I think what's interesting is that you're trying to attract everything. Yes. Yes. And that's really I'm trying to create habitat for as many species as possible. I used to get really concerned about cane toads but now I actually I focus on what everything else needs, and I kind of ignore the toads because my focus is how can I make everything else benefit from the situation and ignore the toads. Yes. So that's how I generally work. But I'm trying to increase it. Look, what I get excited about is I sit in the garden sometimes. I'm like, oh, here's a new species of lizard that wasn't here last week. Yeah. Or a new species of birds. Like only this past 12 months, we've had we've had 2 pairs of whipbirds come in.
Yeah.
And they weren't on the property before, but they've just come in here. They're living here permanently now. And that's just another species.
Just went there in a second ago.
Species of bird that's just arrived, and it's permanently living here now. I expressed to you before, when we had mulberry trees on early days, we'd only have big birds and catbirds and some of those fruit-eating birds appearing just when the mulberries are on. But they've now moved in permanently into the property, and I have those birds here all the time. Yeah. And they get close to them now. Like, they know. They're comfortable.
They know you're not a threat.
Yeah. Well, I keep saying them. Like, I keep talking to them. Like, I'm doing all this for you.
Yeah.
I suppose I create real estate, and they move in very quickly. Whether it's a pile of rocks, or and that'll bring in snakes, lizards, lots of other animals too. So But again, the most critical thing in that whole system is insects and spiders. I must have many of those. If I don't have many spiders and insects, I don't have all these other animals up the food chain able to eat. So it's critical to have spiders and insects, a lot of them in the system. Yeah, really critical.
So you mentioned a bit ago about the spiritual element that you've got with this as well. Can you go into that a little bit further? And why is that so important to you? And is there something you're willing to share with us?
Well, I think to be honest, it's something I've always had. Yeah. But didn't understand really deeply until I was probably around 20.
Yep.
I always felt that I was alone in that feeling, in that depth of knowledge, and knowing. But as I left home and went traveling and started to meet some of my tribe, I started to realize that there was more people out there that felt that deep connection. I never really shared it with anyone growing up, but it was always there. This sense of absolute no separation between me and the outside world. I'm as connected to those birds as they are to the other animals in the system. So I feel that's my connection in the spirituality. It's that deep connection to all those things and to the plants, because they're intrinsically linked. So what I'm trying to do now is trying to bring more humans into that, and actually trying to get humans to reconnect with that natural world, which they're so connected to anyway. But so many of them aren't, because we live in houses, we're disconnected from the natural elements because we're living in houses.
And we're also destroying everything, blanket clearing everything before we build the house in the first place in so many instances. And that's making it's making a big impact on not only on the wildlife, but it's making an impact on the weather. It's making an impact on everything that's around, and I think people are starting to become more aware of this. Certainly a larger group of people starting to become more aware of what's happening. But I think that's interesting, the idea of essentially going in and saying, well, I'm part of you, and I'm part of this, and not looking at that hierarchical structure and saying, I command you. This is being one.
No, like I'm on the same level as all those animals.
Yeah.
For me, there's a deep connection. Like I can sit with animals and we don't talk to each other, but there's downloading of information between us. Like I can spend time with a kangaroo and I learn something on a very deep level from that exchange. Sometimes I had one experience here where the neighbour's dog came in over a few months and was chasing all the kangaroos and the wallabies, and for 3 months no kangaroos and wallabies. And one day I went down and there's a big male kangaroo, like 6-foot kangaroo in the dam, and the dog was on the edge of the dam, and he was barking and barking, and so the kangaroo wouldn't leave the water and the dog wouldn't come into the water. I came outside, ran down there, yelled at the dog.
Yep.
The dog took off, and within a few seconds, the kangaroo came out, stood only a few meters from me, shook itself off, and then as soon as it realized the dog was gone, it just kind of looked at me and went, it was the clearest acknowledgement that it knew that I had helped it. It was so clear.
So I think in terms of do you think that connection that you've got, has that actually contributed to your success in what you're doing? Or
yes, because I always said it when I'm doing workshops to people. I said you've got to sit and watch what's going on in the garden. I don't meditate as such, like I don't sit quietly and doing that, but I actually sit very quietly in the garden, and I might sit there for an hour and I just observe. And I'm constantly observing. So I think the thing I learned the most, the way I learn the most, is observation. So I'm constantly trying to get people to sit and watch what's going on. Grab a cup of tea, just watch. Like I'll put a pond in on the property, and within the next week, I'll go there every afternoon. I'll sit there, and I'll be like, oh, look, there's a lizard. Oh, there's 3 lizards. Ah, look and then something is moving in the water, and all of a sudden a dragonfly is laying eggs in the water. And so again, it's just being aware of those things and observing them. It's really critical.
Yeah, absolutely. And slowing down and taking that in taking that sort of information in. We've talked in the past with some of our other guests about the idea of being a patient observer.
Yeah.
Watching and seeing what's happening. You can learn so much just by watching.
So much. Look, I don't read books very much at all. I haven't been to university, but my knowledge is mainly from observation, and also from having all those animals growing up as well, and learning about them. I did contain them in fish tanks and other things, which I don't want to have anything to do with now. This is the fish tank. This is, for me, this is the biggest joy, having all those animals that I had as a kid, but having them now wild in
their own space,
and without artificially feeding them. I just create niches for them and they move in.
That's wonderful. I think we're talking about you just in terms of that connection that you've got with animals, and that acknowledgement that you can have. You see that in people's gardens. You see that when people actually, when there's that love in the garden goes well. When there's that there is an extra element there. And I think a lot of people who aren't necessarily at this point yet where we're talking about, you'll be able to see those differences, just in your pet dog, in your pet cat. You can see that that they when you do something, they acknowledge that they love you. They come, they wag the tails. You can see that sort of stuff in your domestic pets. The fact that it exists in nature as well, of course.
Totally, yeah. I mean, it's just unfortunate because most humans don't get to connect to that. They miss it. Most of them do. But we're all connected to the same source. It's just that obviously I'm not sharing anything that's not unique. I mean, it's indigenous cultures have done it for thousands of years, and they're deeply connected to the animals and the plants. They've coexisted with them. So for me, it's the same energy. It's just tapping into that again.
Yeah, absolutely.
But again, it's observation. Lots and lots of observation.
Yeah.
And for me, it's also observing, recreating. If I see a certain thing, like I watch female water dragons laying their eggs, and I go, okay, I can see what she likes. I'm going to create more of those opportunities for her to breed. So again, a lot more detail on that particularly, but particularly interested in making sure that the animals have places to breed. And then feed things to feed on as well afterwards.
Well, if they've got those, they've got those things. They've got shelter, procreation, and food. They're going to hang around.
They're going to good. Yeah. Well, they now there's so many animals here now.
Well, that's the thing. I'm amazed by how much we're listening to at the moment. Just the birds going off in the background. I mean, considering the fact we're not that far from essentially suburban area. This is pretty amazing. It really is on what, 6.5 acres.
Yeah. Well, it started as just a grass paddocks, and there's now 74 ponds in. There's about 15 bird baths. Now the bird baths are mainly for the birds, but they also produce opportunities for frog species, for tree frog species. I have about 3 of the bird baths that breed frogs regularly. As well.
So, and you've got your fruit and veggies and whatnot here as well.
Yeah, I grow a massive amount of food here.
Yeah.
Fruits, vegetables, permaculture plants, endemic Australian bush foods. Look, if I can eat it, I'm trying to grow it here.
Yeah.
I don't have everything yet that's available on the planet, but I have a lot of species of edible things here.
Yeah.
And again, it's not just for me, because a lot of things I like to eat, so do the animals as well.
Well, there becomes that sort of idea of so certainly a permaculture idea is the idea, abundance, and so you go through, you grow enough, so you've got enough for the animals to be able to come in and eat while still having enough for you as well.
Plenty. Yeah, I've got species in the garden like a midgeonberry. It's a native berry that grows on the coast.
Yeah.
It's a pretty tasty berry for humans, but I don't get to eat them anymore because the birds eat all of them. Currawongs, small fig birds, catbirds, birds that love eating little fruit. Yeah. So they come in and eat them all the time. So again, for me, it's like great.
Yeah.
I'm not that excited about eating them, but I know that the birds eat them now. So again, I keep putting them in for those species as well.
So in terms of sharing your knowledge and spreading that around to people, you do consultations.
Yeah, I do. I've been consulting for many years, but I'm doing a lot more of it now.
Okay.
So I'll usually go in for an hour or two.
Yep.
Not every client wants to talk about habitat or food growing, so it could be about a whole range of things.
Yeah.
But I'm particularly get called in for that kind of thing. Where do I put my orchard?
Specialist.
Yeah. How do I grow vegetables? How do I what fruit trees have I got? Some people buy a property and they've got no idea they've got 50 fruit trees.
Yeah.
And they've got no idea what they've got, so I might go and identify them.
Yep.
And then tell them what part's edible and that kind of thing.
That's the important thing. I mean, doing what I do, you see that actually happen a lot where people have got no idea, and I know a couple, but being able to have actually access to someone like yourself to be able to come in and do that, that's fantastic.
Look, I get really excited about it because again, I'm constantly trying to learn my trade. So I'm constantly trying to learn about. So if I see a plant I don't know what it is, I'm going to identify it. I'm going to find out what it is. Can I eat it? What birds attract to it? What animals attract to it? So it's constantly, I'm just constantly trying to learn. So, it's a never ending, what I'm teaching now about habitat is very different to what I was teaching, 10 years ago. So,
is that because your attitude has changed, or?
Well, because the knowledge is different.
Yeah, okay.
There's depth of knowledge there that wasn't. I thought I came here 20 years ago thinking I knew some things, but the last 20 years I've just learned so much, and I just know the next 20 years will be massive amount of learning. Because again, the more and more I focus on that, the more and more I learn from that. Again, in 20 years from now, I'll be teaching differently again. From that knowledge. So
teaching wise, you do you run workshops and courses? And
I do workshops. I do 3 different workshops generally, but I also do a lot of talks in garden clubs, permaculture courses. I talk for land care. I talk for land. Done some talks with all the libraries on the coast. Spoken at lots of festivals and they're coming up the Off Grid Festival in September. Talking there as well. So
we'll see you there. Definitely.
Particularly for me, it's not about me. It's more about getting that message out to grow food. Create habitat, particularly create habitat. Yeah,
absolutely. So where can people find out where they can talk? Do you have a website?
Yep. We've got a website.
So was one
it's just oneearthlandscaping.com.au.
Okay, all right. So be able to check out that and be able to see the where we can see you next and whatnot as well. So we're going to make sure we got links to that on our socials and on the story notes as well, and through our website too. But it's really exciting what you're doing here. So what's something that you've been working on here recently? Is there anything in particular?
Ponds?
More ponds?
More ponds.
So 74 is not enough?
No. Look, my plan is about 150.
Yeah, okay. Wow.
I've still got 1.5 acres at the bottom. That's where my daughter's horse is.
Yeah.
And eventually, in the next, say, 5 years, the horse will go. Yeah. And I'll be transforming all that into habitat.
Yeah.
Predominantly. I'll leave some grass, little vistas of grass for the kangaroos and the wallabies. But predominantly, there'll be probably another 30 ponds in that little vicinity down there as well.
Yeah.
So at the moment, my newest project is up on the driveway. Okay. So I'm putting in a creek bed down the driveway.
Yeah.
4 ponds in that system. So that's just been set up last week. So we've just planted it, and we're, again, I'm up there every afternoon. Yeah. Just putting more plants in, putting more logs in, putting more rocks into the system.
So what you're doing, is stuff? Can this be essentially downscaled into suburban backyard?
Absolutely. If I lived in a unit block, on a second story building, I would have habitat in my patio.
Yeah.
Because I could bring reptiles in, I could bring birds in, I could bring insects in. So I knew I could bring tree frogs in. So I could create habitat on 5 stories up if I had to. Yeah, I could. I mean, anyone could. It's not anyone could do that. It's just a matter of, do you have the passion and the drive to do that?
Yeah.
But I've said to people, if you live in a unit block, still create habitat.
Yeah.
No problem.
So that's exciting. So what's something, if you could give a couple of tips for what we could do for people, for our listeners who wanting to take that next step, where do we start?
Water.
Yep.
So get some water into the garden, whether that's initially, I'd say make that water a permanent pond, not a temporary pond, because you need that permanent water for the birds, for the frogs, for the lizards, for the marsupials.
So you can do that if you've got a base, like you were saying about the tubs and things like that.
You can use something solid like a plastic tub. Anything will do that holds water. But again, I use mostly plastic pond liners.
Yep.
So then I can freeform the pond how I want it to look.
Yes.
And size wise. But you don't need a pump. But generally, I'd say to people, water.
Yep.
Rocks, logs, and mulch.
Yep.
They're critical. And then the plant material. Remember, frog species and all animals live in all those layers of vegetation. Just like in a permaculture garden, you have food growing under the ground, on the ground, up trellises, up. You have edible palms, edible grasses, edible trees. All those animal species need all those layers of vegetation too. Yeah. So it's really critical we get all those layers of vegetation around the ponds or in the garden. Yeah. So that, because a lot of frogs are right up in the canopy. Remember, frogs aren't coming down. They're coming down to feed, but they're not coming down to breed unless they're an adult. So they're not hanging around the ponds. Once they become a frog, they're gone.
Yeah,
it's too dangerous in the pond. They get eaten.
Yeah, because there's everything else that's coming to the pond to drink.
Lots of animals here that eat the frogs. There's things like keelback snakes, which are a freshwater snake. They're only a small snake, but they love eating tadpoles and frogs.
Yeah,
and they're in all my ponds.
Yep.
And again, I used to get upset by that, but after 5 years, I just went, "Oh, this is perfect.
This is the circle of life. This is what's going on."
Yeah. Look, I used to get sad. I'd see something fly down and grab a frog. I'm like, but now I just go, wow, that's amazing. I just saw that.
Yeah.
I've seen snakes eat water dragons over here within 2 meters of me, catch water dragons and eat them, and amazing. Again, you just got to be in the garden to see those things.
Yeah.
And sometimes I look and I might see a split second of something and I go, wow, if I hadn't looked in that exact direction in that exact moment, I would have missed that whole experience.
Yeah.
Maybe it was an eagle coming down and grabbing something, so again, observation. Most critical thing I say, observe what's going on.
Yeah.
If you've got acreage, find out where the kangaroos and the wallabies are coming through. Maybe cut that fence out or protect that fence so that they don't get caught up in it. But generally, I'd say water, rocks, logs, mulch, and plants. Critical. The logs, a lot of things utilize the logs as they break down. A lot of borers come in and start decomposing that wood. Again, rotten logs in the garden are absolutely critical. Again, frogs, reptiles are cold-blooded, so they need warm places to be at night. So again, rocks and logs warm up in the daytime and then release that heat through the night. So generally, I'd say rocks and logs are absolutely essential. Also, depending on the species you want, there's more unique things I would bring into the garden. If I was bringing in water dragons, for instance, I would bring in piles of gravel and sand or piles of ash from a fire because the females love laying in those piles. Again, observe the females, watch what they do, and then recreate those things for those females to breed again. I've got 2 females that come up and breed around the house. They don't breed the dam, but they come up, and I know they've bred because they hang out for about 3 days around the house. And I see her, and she's got a very different face to the rest of the bigger dragons, the males. Her face is much more refined, and she's a smaller lizard. But she comes up here, and I've had the funniest experiences with her sometimes. I've caught her sometimes just laid eggs, and she's backfilling the hole, and I've looked at her, and she's looked up in the air, pretending like she's doing nothing.
There's nothing.
And as soon as I turn away, she's back growing the eggs again, and then I look, and she stops, and then so it's funny to watch again. I've got to be in that location in that moment to have that experience. So again, I sit all over the property on a regular basis and observe. And again, if I see something new, I'm like, wow, I've never seen that snake here before. I've never seen that bird. And again, I observe and listen, watch.
So in terms of just saying about the idea of setting up, watching the female water dragons and seeing what they were doing, is the focus on that is the idea is if I have the females, the males will come.
No, the males are already here. There's heaps of males.
Okay, so
there's only 2 females that come up here and breed. So they breed in the spring up here and they breed in the autumn or late summer. But yeah, the males are down there. I don't see the males coming up here. The females come up here, and then when they hatch, I'll find little baby water dragons all over the place. But over a few months, a lot of them get eaten, unfortunately. But some of them are getting to become adults. But I've got about 20 on the property at the moment. But I'd love to have it like Australia Zoo, where they're everywhere. If you've been to Australia Zoo, there's water dragons everywhere. That's my vision. To have water dragons all over the property. I have a good supply now, but I'm hoping they'll get to a critical mass, and they'll just all of a sudden I'll be like, oh, there's 50 here now. But they get to a certain point, and then they get predated on. Like lots of birds love eating baby water dragons. Snakes eat them all the time. So and even other marsupials will eat them too. Goannas eat them if they can catch them as well.
But if you're bringing that you're building that ecosystem to attract everything, you're going to have that balance is going to come in.
And it's actually quite, after about 19 years now, it's quite balanced here. It's I don't have any major imbalances with pests or diseases. So generally, I haven't sprayed ever on the property any chemicals. I keep it all as organic as possible. So again, if you spray chemicals, you're going to probably kill spiders. You're going to probably kill insects. So that's really important not to spray. The other thing that's really important, as I mentioned before, is insects and spiders are critical in the system. So what I would suggest to get that happening is let your fruit trees, let your herbs and your vegetables, let them flower and seed, because that brings a lot of insects in. We also can collect that seed for the next year's harvest. But there's so many insects brought in with those flowering vegetables and herbs. Plus, also don't manicure your garden. Let there be some wild space in there. I overplant my garden heavily, so there's lots of vegetation and there's lots of places, little niches for things to move into. If you're particularly into small birds, you need to have lots of spiky bushes for them to nest in and places for them to hide. So again, it depends on the species that you're trying to add to the property. As to what else you might add to the property.
You're going to do it. So if you were to plant some bottle brush everywhere, you're going to get a sucking bird that's looking for that nectar.
Certain type of bird,
fair enough. So do you have anything? We've talked to a few other people about the idea of encouraging different species by having bees and whatnot around the place.
Yeah, I've got you'll probably see in the garden. I've got 11 native beehives.
Fantastic.
They're not mine. They're beyond. They belong to a friend of mine who's down the coast. They have a bee sanctuary and they take those hives into schools and teach kids about schools. So they've left them here for the last 6 months.
Yep.
Because they're down south and there was issues with down south where they were, so they brought them here.
Yeah.
I've got so in total I've got 13 boxes of beehives. Native beehives. Used to have honeybees, but don't have them anymore.
Is there a particular reason for that?
They weren't mine. They were lent here and brought here as part of an organisation.
Yep.
And they lost a couple of hives here, so they didn't bring them back anymore. But I've got great results with the native bees.
Yep. Well, you're working with essentially the honeybee being an introduced species. By working with natives, you're working with natives in your gardens as well. The rest of your animals are as well.
Yeah. Plus nesting boxes. There's about 10 nesting boxes on the property too, and they're nesting boxes for things like gliders. We do have some shore gliders living on the property, which is amazing.
Yeah.
We had a tree taken down and there was a nesting box on it. The tree had been hit by lightning, so we took the nesting box off and put it onto a tree next to it.
Yep.
And when the tree lopper came, there was 3 in the box, and they were the most gorgeous. For me, that was the biggest joy, was finding shore gliders on the property.
Yeah.
Again, I've only seen one in the late afternoon fly.
Yeah.
Or glide and then hit a tree and run.
Yeah.
And I knew I'd seen them here, but after this last time, I'm like, big joy for me to see that living here permanently.
Absolutely. So Sean, in terms of how things are set up here, what are the benefits, and why should we be setting something like this up?
Yeah. Look, for me, the first thing is food miles. Like, we grow food, all over Australia. It gets shipped and trucked and all over the place. And for me, I try and grow as much food as I can here. I'll be honest and say I don't eat everything here all the time because I'm busy, very busy. But I've got so much food in the garden. So I think it's great for the environment to grow your own food. I mean, that's a pretty clear statement. But it's if you're not buying that food from somewhere else, you're eating it fresh from your land. It's just going to be better for you. It's going to be better for the land. It's going to be better for the environment. But generally, with vegetables, I just pick what I need when I need it. I don't have to go to the supermarket and buy leafy greens. I just go, I want some tonight, I'll go and pick some. So, but again, I just think it's really important that people get, because so many animals have had their habitat destroyed.
Yeah.
So for me, I just know that here, if I do this, I can create habitat here for as long as I'm living alive.
Yeah.
I don't intend to leave this property unless I'm pass on. I would hope, I suppose that the benefit to people is they're going to get higher yields of things. Like, for instance, once I added the bees onto the property, all my yields increased. So I don't grow a lot of tomatoes, but for instance, a plant like a tomato, I would get way more tomatoes, bigger, juicier, better tomatoes, because there's the pollinating insects are here. So in that benefit, it's really important to have the pollinating insects in the system. Otherwise, I get a much better yield in that regard. So people that are growing food, benefit is you'll get more food. Obviously, some things get eaten by some animals, and depends where you are as opposed to what might be eaten and what might not be eaten in the garden.
In terms of the ponds in particular, so why is that something that we should be all be looking into?
Again, I guess goes back to the fact that there's massive destruction of habitat across the planet, and if someone can actually get in and put some little habitat, even if it's a tiny little thing in their garden, it's just going to support those species locally. It's hard to work on a global scale or even an Australian scale. So I try to keep it like, what can I do just here, and what can I guarantee that's going to survive? So for me, it's just whether you've got 100 square meter block, or whether you've got 1,000 acres, you can still do things.
But every individual can do something that's going to make a difference, and collectively makes a big difference.
For me, I just know that I'll come into this property, and if I live here in another 35 years, I'll have had 50 years on this property, and I know that that's 50 years of those animals having a home, not having those homes destroyed. So for me, it's just that, and those animals are more and more, they know, because the previous owner was here with horses and cattle, and she scared the kangaroos away. So all of a sudden, the kangaroos are very comfortable now. The wallabies less comfortable; they're a bit more skitterish. But for me, the benefit is creating homes for all these animals that have necessarily possibly have their homes destroyed somewhere else.
Yeah.
I think potentially suburbia may be the last final frontier where some of those species actually survive and thrive, but in the wild they may not anymore. But they come to the city or they come to suburbia, and there's a lot of animals living in suburbia, a huge amount, and they're actually thriving, some of them.
So I think that then brings us to the idea of some domestic animals. You know, how do people with pets? You know, there's obviously got to be some negative impact.
Yeah, look, as well. Again, I always say to people, if you've got cats or dogs, make sure you lock the dogs up at night, lock the cats up at night. Cats are particularly devastating. Yeah. Dogs are too, but cats have another whole element. They're very much like a hunt. Dogs sometimes just play with an animal, but don't necessarily kill it. Yeah. A lot of times, cats can kill. Yeah. So I'd say keep cats and dogs in at night. I don't have any cats or dogs here. My daughter's desperate for a dog, but she knows that she's got a horse.
Yeah, horse. Yeah,
she's got a horse, so that's a pretty good exchange. But
it's a big dog.
Yeah, it's a big dog. It's a big dog. Now you can have. I often have clients that tell me they've got a dog that goes outside and doesn't chase anything. Yeah, that definitely happens. But generally you've got to keep watch. Particularly just don't let your cats out at night. Particularly some cats these days have little runs that they caged out. They could be outside in the sun if they want, but they're caged in, so that unless an animal gets into the cage, the animals are pretty safe. So that's a great option. That's happened in the last sort of 5 to 10 years. People are getting these sort of big cages outside for the cats.
Seen them around there.
Great option. It just means the cat can be outside too if it wants. Yeah, it doesn't eat anything. So I like that as an option. Yeah. Again, what I've been lucky enough to hear that the neighbour's dog ran in here for 3 months, chased all the kangaroos. But after that 3-month period, I went and spoke to him, and he got electric collars for the dogs. Yep. And now it's quite a unique thing that's happened here now. It's because the kangaroos used to run through the fence, being chased by the dogs at high speed. They continue at high speed through my place, but now they get to the fence, the dog stops. Yep. The kangaroo comes through a few meters, turns around, and gives the dog the funniest look of like, what are you going to do about it? And it's the funniest thing. And I think even though that was a negative, it became a real positive. So there's this magical line just there. And when they cross it, they know they're safe. They stop. They come in through the gate or through the fence, and they stop.
They've got their power back.
They've got that. For me, it's actually made this property even more important to them, because they know they cross that magical invisible line there, and they're safe. Because they don't get chased anymore. I mean, I can't stop a wild dog coming in or a dingo, and we have them sometimes. Yeah. And I've had one cat here that was here for a few weeks and did some damage, but eventually we caught it, and it had a paralysis tick, so it just died anyway when I caught it. It didn't like being caught, but yeah, look, cats and dogs can do a lot of damage, so just be mindful when you let them out. Yep. Chickens too. People go, "Oh, I love my chickens roaming all in the garden," but chickens kill everything. They'll just eat so many things in the garden. So again, if you've got chickens, fence them out, or let them out just for half an hour before they go to sleep, so they don't decimate the garden, because they'll go back and just destroy the garden, and they'll destroy frogs, lizards, anything they can find, grubs, So I love chickens, but I don't like having them destroyed. Yeah, especially the native animals.
But it all really comes down to responsibility, doesn't it?
Yeah. Again, I've seen little chickens put in little boxes. I don't like seeing them in a tiny little box. Yeah. But give them some space, but keep them contained, because again, they'll eat a lot of animals in the day if they get a chance as well.
Sean, that's been fantastic, mate. I've really absolutely got a lot out of this, and I can't wait to go and check out now. To go for a 1 to 3 year property. But we're heading that time where we're moving into our 1660. So you ready to go?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Right. What's a personal habit that contributes to your success?
I'd say focus, just determination and focus, to make sure as many people on the planet as possible learn about habitat and can create it. And I try to make it as simple as possible. I'm not creating anything unique. I'm just recreating nature. That's all I'm doing. So nothing unique, just recreating what's already existing on the planet. So again, keeping the focus. Just keep really clear vision of what I want, which is for people to create habitat.
All right. So what's the best advice you've ever received?
The funniest one that comes to mind is a mate of mine's mother. When I left home and moved and went traveling for 7 years, she told me to turn my washing inside out when I washed it, and hang it on the line inside out. Yep. And it was good information.
That's good advice. It was. It's not going to fade then.
Well, no. When you get something shits on it,
Oh,
It was good. It was good advice.
that's great.
It's very off topic, but it was good advice.
Yeah. Off topic is great. So what's one thing you're most fired up about today?
Habitat loss.
Yeah.
Clearly. And just the fact that humans just don't connect to the natural world anymore.
Yeah.
I know some humans do, absolutely. But a lot of humans miss out on that absolute joy that is connecting with the natural world. Plants and animals, they can teach you so much.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that'd be it.
You could recommend one book or podcast to our audience, what would it be?
As I mentioned, I'm not a big book reader.
Yeah.
I probably only read about 6 or 8 books in my whole life.
Yeah.
And they're probably the ones I was forced to read at school. Look, if I said a movie, I'd probably have to say Baraka.
Okay.
Baraka was a movie I saw when I was 21.
Yeah.
And it changed my entire world.
All right.
So a very powerful film.
Okay.
Yeah. So I would suggest that's an amazing film to check out.
Yeah, certainly.
Baraka.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what personal goals are you hoping to achieve in the next 12 months?
Look, help more people. You know, inspire more people to create habitat.
Yeah.
And grow food. That would be my focus.
Yeah.
And put more ponds in here.
More ponds. working up to the 150.
Yeah. It might be more, but it'll be at least that.
All right. So the mystery question is: if you could replace all the grass in the world with something else, what would that be and why?
It'd either be something insect attracting,
or
it'd be something I can eat. But probably something I could eat.
Yeah.
It would have to be probably something like something very tasty, like a japoticaba, or some jackfruit.
Yep.
You know, it'd be something of a tasty fruit.
Yeah.
Say, if I had to pick. But I mean, there's a lot of beautiful flowers out there too.
Yeah.
A lot of nice smells too. But yeah, I'd say something edible.
Something edible.
Like a jackfruit or japoticaba.
Love it. Sean, mate, thank you so much for being a part of this today. I really, really do appreciate that. So, mate, it's been wonderful. Is there anything else you wanted to share that we haven't touched on today?
Look, mainly just doesn't matter how small you start. You can just go out there and start, and don't get discouraged if you put a pond in and no frogs arrive. Put another pond in somewhere else, because that location you chose may not have been enough. If you're going to put a pond in, make sure the animals can get in and out of the water. That's critical. So rocks and logs into the water. Make sure the animals can get out. If a frog becomes a frog and it's turned in from a tadpole to a frog and it can't get out of the water, dead frog.
It's done.
It has to have ways in and out of the water. So that's pretty critical.
Perfect. Guys, I hope you all appreciated that. I know I appreciated it, enjoyed it. I absolutely enjoyed it and appreciate it. Sean, thank you again for it.
Thank you.
Everybody, stay tuned. We'll talk to you later on.
Thanks very much.
Wow, I know I'm certainly inspired to put a pond in at my place. I'm sure you are too. Anyway, Sean was great to have a chat with. Learnt an absolute incredible amount of information. Make sure you check him out through his website. And also, be sure to give us a like, a share, a subscribe, and leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. We'd love to have a chat. We'd love to hear from you. And talk to you next time. Bye.